Do. It's another recording with Don that he hasn't done anything to produce on. Right, guys, welcome. This is the Identity Human podcast, and it's going to be the world's most popular unproduced podcast at some time in the journey that we're developing here. Thank you again for listening. I really appreciate you coming back. And for those of you that waited in bated breath, please do let me know who you are so I can acknowledge you. And for those of you that are listening for a first time, remember, we're on episode 13 now, and that's awesome. We're just going through the journey. The easiest access to Spotify, so we record this online, literally upload it straight after recording, no editing done. And that's just to try and remove all the barriers that usually get in the way of taking action and trying to keep it simple. So if you are joining, welcome to the journey. I'd recommend listening to some of the bits that we've done before, specifically last week. That high performance triangle is really one that I base a lot of what I do on now, and it really helps empower my mindset and the things that I see and the way that I can interact with others. One point on that, right? One point on that. I was looking at my podcast episodes and then the titles, because I was like, are we on episode 14 or episode 13? What episode is it? And when I went to Identity Human and I saw episode 12, we speak about my golden tool. Right. When you are in a rush and you type something and you don't really think about how else that can be read. I apologize in advance if anyone took that in the wrong way. The golden tool I was referring to was the high performance triangle. And what I meant by that is the golden thread that kind of knits everything together for me. That's the angle that I was trying to take with it. So please understand that there's that fix, and that's what I was actually trying to go for. And I appreciate anyone that took that in the right humor. Because I did. And if you didn't, then you're probably in the wrong podcast listening to, because, there might be more of those. Anyway, so today we are going to be speaking about one of my favorite mental concepts that really does help me out, because it really gives a whole lot of structure. And more so for structure, if you guys don't listen to last week, it gives a whole lot of understanding to what you can observe so that you can kind of change what you see within yourself or within others. If those of you have a partner, this really helps. What it's called is called above the line and below the line thinking. Now, fascinating video that I've watched on this ages ago, and then I've even gone and read the book called Conscientious Leadership, obviously from the leadership book business that I've got. We are in the name of studying and learning. And what that talks about is there's two states of mind that we have, and they simplify this in going, it's above the line and below the line. What does that actually mean? So if we think about it from a primal sense, your primal brain, i.e. what we've talked about maybe is the chimp. The chimp wants to go below the line. It is the protective survival instinct, the fight or flight. That's what it is. So naturally we are wired to go below the line. Modern day, we kind of don't have the same threats as we did before. So we have this opportunity to be what we call above the line. This is the, make good choices, the open, friendly, conscientious, accountable, find better ways, take responsibility. It's basically just let's collaborate. Let's just be friends. So kind of when you are experiencing something new, so maybe not experiencing something new, but if you've had a couple of tips of drink, right, and you're starting to feel what they call tipsy, and you start to feel the fluffiness, and you start to feel, everyone starts to be a friend. You see those people that go around hugging people. They just can walk up to a group of strangers and high five them and be like, that's what I would probably say is the best way to recognize what above the line looks like. Now, obviously, in modern day, that's great to have. But if you were back in the day and you were above the line, what happens if a T-Rex wants to walk past your cave? You're going to go and high five the T-Rex. That's not an insult to their short arms. You're not. You're going to want to make sure you protect your family, your cave, your meat, whatever you've got going on there. That's where you need below the line, which we'll get to. So modern day, we want to make sure that we're constantly pushing ourselves to be above the line as often as possible. And that's where I think what I would term as growth mindset, that's what I would term as like when you're self-aware and you have that right mental energy, that energy state is in a good place, you are able to go above the line more often. Now, let's talk a little bit about below the line. So in a simple way, what does below the line look like? What does it mean? Below the line, like I said, is this instinctual reaction to protect. So we're competitive, we're argumentative, we're closed off, we are seeking out arguments to be able to win. So a good example where you actually need to be below the line is if someone bursts through your door and they have a knife, a weapon, a gun, or they have the intent to do something that's going to harm you. You don't want to be above the line and be like, oh, hey, how you going? Yeah, sure, take all my money. Like, let's be honest here. This is where you want to be below the line, and that guy is going down or that girl is going down. Depends who's broken through the door. So we have to understand that you can't just have one, not the other. So it's the same thing where we talk about, say, emotions and accepting things. And when you're self-aware, you've got to, if you want to make a change in life, you have to be aware of it, but you don't want to try and change it. Because if you can change something and you have the willpower to live with that change, you become a disaster to live with because you become so controlling around aspects of that change. And I thought that when I've read that before, that was really insightful, is you don't want to be able to get to a point where you can control something in yourself that you want to change. The best way to do it is by just being aware that there's something that you want to change. So every time it pops up, you're aware of it. And you can then, what they call NLP, you can just think about it in a different way. So neuro-linguistic programming, sorry for NLP, for anyone that doesn't understand that. And you can actually just think about it in a different way. Now, this is the same for if we can become aware of when we are below the line or when we're above the line, then you can make a difference. You can make a change. So if you have a partner, friend, or work colleagues or teammates, and you guys all buy into this this one sentence called "Where am I?" or "Where are you?" and we understand what we mean by that. So if I see someone is trying to argue, is being defensive, or is even stressed out, like if you're in a stressed out state, it's going to send you below the line. Because you're going to defend your ego, you're going to be defensive. So when you react negatively to feedback, that's a defensive state. So this is where we talk about, say, fixed mindset, is anytime the ego is challenged, then we react to that. So ego kind of sits below the line, and we want to make sure that we're rising above the line, growing, being friendly, being open, being cooperative. So like I said, that is an instinctual, that is wired into our brain. That's where we'll go a lot easier than above the line. So now, if you remember, we talked about our goal-setting model with neuroplasticity before, which we might actually do a whole episode on neuroplasticity because it's so fascinating. And there's still a lot of people that I interact with that haven't actually heard about it or know what it is. But if you understand neuroplasticity, and for those of you that don't, it's just rewiring the neurons in your brain by thinking the same thought or doing the same thing over and over and over again until it becomes natural. That's as simple as I can say. So if we understand that neuroplasticity is a thing, scientifically backed, then it means that if you are finding yourself going below the line a lot, and someone or yourself has the ability to go, where are you? Where are you? Where am I? Where am I? So am I below the line? Yes, I am. Okay, let's take a breath. I'm going to go above the line. The more often you do that, the less often you'll go below the line because you'll have developed these mechanisms that recognize when you're going there, you stop and you get above the line. Now, just to put a bit more context to what above the line versus below the line thinking is before we get into some of the other concepts. Above the line is what I would say taking ownership, being accountable, and actually always looking at taking responsibility for what's happened. So what kind of thoughts would I expect to see with someone that's above the line? What did I contribute to this? What else is going on that I'm not aware of? Or what can I do differently? So if you think about that approach, so anytime that you are having an argument with a friend, a partner, a work colleague, or you're getting this state of mind that you're agitated, understand then, if you can say, where am I? You're going to say, oh, I'm below the line. Now, I want to get above the line. What does that look like? Okay, so where can I take responsibility for this? Just by thinking these thoughts, these are what I call like mental structures, mental coping mechanisms, however you want to term them. They're going to get you into different states of mind. Below the line is now, if you want to recognize it, is when you're full of denial, when you're blaming and you're making excuses. Okay, because there's always a solution. And if you stay below the line, you're not going to find that solution. Now, what kind of thinking type would you expect to recognize when you're below the line? It's not my fault. I'm right. They're wrong. I know everything there is to know. So it's kind of like a blame game. So this is where someone's probably full of biases, well, maybe not negative, well, negative biases, but they're not necessarily a bad thing. Some other things that come in below the line here is, like we said, blame, deny, excuses, do nothing, being a victim. So victim mindset, for me, this one's a big one, is a below the line mindset. And now, why do I mention that? Because everyone kind of understands victim, and people that are being victims don't like being told that they're being a victim. It's the worst thing. I've been called it before, and it's right, but it doesn't mean that it's easy to hear. So if you can sense yourself going into this victim mindset, this finding fault, blocking things, you feel like you've got no control, you always see failure, understand that you are thinking below the line. And if you can just be aware of that, you can make the decision to get yourself above the line, because it's a state of mind. So now, what are some other things that we can talk about above the line? Like hope, when you can see solutions, you own things, you seek solutions too. Taking action, feedback. So taking action for me is a big one. I often will, I don't know if I've referred to it before in the podcast, but inaction breeds fear. I don't know if you've ever heard that. Dale Carnegie wrote that in his book, and it's brilliant. Another saying that I heard the other day that it stuck with me, and it stuck with me for good reason. And it says, if you find yourself in hell, keep walking, because every step you take is one more chance to get out of hell. But if you don't take any steps, you're sure not going to stay. You're sure not going to get out of hell. So that taking action is really important. But how often do we find ourselves wanting to do something and thinking about it, but not taking action? Okay, so that is just as simple as we're a bit below the line. We're a bit fear-based. We're a bit, we can see every reason why not to do it. I wanted to start this coaching business, but I didn't because there's so many coaches out there. I mean, guys, there's billions of people out there. What makes you think that there's not going to be enough people for you to get business? And this is good reflection for me when it comes to sales is, you put a LinkedIn post out there, no one responds, you think, oh, no one wants to buy my business. Actually, you just haven't tried hard enough. But the below the line thinking really does take over. It's your ego that comes in. It threatens your existence and and I suppose I'm listening to this book, and he talks about self-importance. It's like your self-importance gets in the way, guys. Like, think about that. The self-importance is what takes you below the line. Whenever you get offended, it's because you're self-important. Whenever you are feeling disrespected, it's because you're self-important. Like, who cares? Like, have we actually managed to think about breaking down some of these mindset actions, these behaviors, these things that come out in us that actually stop us from wanting to achieve? All they are is excuses. But we don't look at them like that. We think that they are logical reasons why we shouldn't be doing things. Hello, guys, let's think. Let's critically think about the things that are stopping us from achieving what we want to achieve. And you're going to find them that they're this below the line mental state. So what we have to do is not necessarily go, I need to make changes, I can't do this, but just sometimes just sit there and go, where am I? So what I'm going to tie back in is just being aware of things. So if you think, where am I? Just by thinking that, you're going to observe where you are. And just by observing where you are, you're going to notice that you're below the line, and you're going to know, okay, I need to get above the line. So I can introduce some mental structures off the back of last week's podcast. So hopefully you listen to it. So some of the things that I do if I notice I'm below the line is, I can get my wife, Ray, to say, where are you? We went through a phase of this, and then it kind of faded out because we've forgotten about it. But if you can recognize it below the line, taking a breath through the nose, taking if you've ever seen those tapping exercises that people do, if you're way below the line, going for a run, doing yoga, all these mindful things that we get told to do that we don't actually end up doing. If we can understand the power they have from getting us below the line to above the line, then we understand how to implement them in our lives, and we can stop ourselves getting stuck in a fear-based state where we don't achieve anything because we don't recognize that we actually have the power to be able to achieve what we want to achieve. So there's no point in me kind of trying to overcomplicate a concept. I'm going to summarize it now, and if there's nothing else left to say, then I'm just going to stop it there. It doesn't have to be a 30-minute episode for the sake of being a 30-minute episode. Below the line is a defensive state of mind that comes out when you need fight or flight and you've got to survive. This is where I would call the chimp sits. This is olden day, the need to survive is what a human, the whole point of us being on this earth is to survive. Modern day, there's still this ego, there's still this survival instinct, but we don't recognize that it's not as big a threat to us anymore. So we need to do ourselves a favor and get above the line. Above the line is that open, conscientious, friendly, no one's competition. If you want to argue with me, I'm really sorry. We don't need to argue. There's better ways to do this. If I win and you lose, we both lose. Okay, so let's make sure that everyone's winning around us. If they're not, then we need to find solutions. So that's above the line and below the line for me. And I think for one thing, if you can remember to implement this in your day-to-day and just give yourself some mental triggers to get yourself from below the line to above the line, you'll start to see things change. And especially like for the first week, month, or couple of months, it'll be really helpful because you'll rise above things so well, and you'll be like, this is what it feels like. But then in about a year's time, you might forget about this and go back below the line. And I want you to try and remember this then. So say to yourself, I will remember this in a year's time. And watch where you notice, wow, you've actually gone below the line in so many things. Maybe it's the people that surround you. Maybe it's the environment that you're currently in, business not going well. It's, when it comes to leadership, but the ability to stay positive when everyone else is not staying positive, that's something that either comes naturally or you can develop. So for me, how do you develop that? You practice going above the line. And I'm going to keep hammering away at this. Like, it's a really good mental concept to understand to get you through times where you're just not feeling it. So I'm really hoping that that's going to, what's the word I'm looking for? Add some value, help you in your day to day. And if you did watch last week, if you did listen to last week's podcast, I spoke about the triangle. Then I said, okay, draw this line with a wavy line going in and out, up and down on it. And the structures are what helps you level those things out to be more consistent. Now, remember, above the line sits above that line that you drew. So we're going to have structures in place that get us above the line. That could be, like I said, the mindfulness exercises, the breathing. But it also, when you're below the line, those same structures help you get up. So just by asking that question, you're looking up and you're going, okay, I need to get above the line again. What do I need to do? That's going to change your state of mind. That's where having these structures in place, knowing what they're all about, are going to make a difference to your day to day. Right. I am now repeating it. I'm just testing out that you know the knowledge. There is no point in saying much else about it. I think you guys have the gist of it. This for me really helps. I'm hoping it's starting to plug in as we go on this journey to a lot of different elements to make it a robust formula for you to use in your day-to-day within the mindset, within Identity Human. I almost think we're maybe building Voltron. If you ever watched Voltron as a kid, there's a cartoon with 5 different robotic lions. But when they were facing a big foe, all the lions would come together and they'd form Voltron, the defender of the universe. Kind of like Optimus Prime. He had a really big sword for when he really needed it. They would just chop through anything. So all of these little bits that I'm giving us are like the lions of Voltron. And we're going to build this really big superhero, which is going to be you, Identity Human, who you are, how you go about things. So on that note, I'm going to end. I'm going to say thank you very much for listening. I really appreciate you. If this made a difference in your day, feel free to spread it. Feel free to see if other people can actually learn from this, because we're going to be building the journey from here and just going and hopefully getting some guests on soon. The last note I want to leave you on is remember the principle of Ubuntu. We are who we are through others. But don't give away your bricks. And so another way to say this, and I saw this as a very good trigger, it said, instead of saying, I'll take care of you, you take care of me, let's start saying, I'll take care of me for you, and you take care of you for me. That way, we'll both be in a better place. We can both lift each other up that way. And I think that really resonates. I love that. So have a great week. Thanks for listening. And we will see you in a week's time. You'll hear me in a week's time. I won't see you. Thanks very much. Have a great week. Bye-bye.